And I'm just like, where are all the hot female paleontologists, dude?
Jake, we're in the middle of this recording session.
Did you start recording? Oh yeah. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Film Tangents Podcast, Season 2, baby.
Season 2, man.
Let's go.
Welcome back, everybody. If you don't know us, my name is Jake, and if you don't know the other guy, his name's Edward. Welcome back to the Film Tangents Show.
Yeah, and what he means is I'm Jake, and that's
What do you mean you're Jake? What do you mean?
Yeah, dude, you're
What's going on?
Dude, I swear, people to this day probably don't know who's who because we keep throwing them off. You'll never know.
With all seriousness, I am Jake, and then the other guy, the other voice that you hear, that's Edward.
We're back, everybody. You know what time it is. We don't need to say Happy New Year. It's like Larry David said. It's too late. It's not New Year anymore. It's not a new year. It's January. It's end of January.
Isn't it in that episode? Isn't it also like a thing that it's like someone's dad passed away or something, but it was like a year ago or something like that, so he won't say like condolences.
Oh yeah, what's that?
I think that's also part of it.
Dude,
I think
final season's coming back on February 4th, man.
That's right.
I am so excited for that, man. Oh my god, that's gonna be good.
Man, I watched this video of George Lucas, and it was it's this video.
It's like poetry; it rhymes.
It's this video that's been circulating. I've never seen the last Indiana Jones movie. You know the name of it?
Oh, I didn't see that. I don't plan on it either. Dial of Destiny or something?
Oh, Dial of Destiny. So what's the Kingdom of the Crystal Skulls? That's just like the third one of the original ones?
No, that's the fourth. That was from, I did see that one. That was the one with Shia LaBeouf. Did you see that one?
Oh, that's right. Okay, yeah, I'm getting myself confused. That's the one that I'm talking about.
Okay.
I'm not talking about like the one where they CGI'd Harrison Ford's skeleton back to be Indiana Jones.
Yeah. Harrison Ford's dead, right? They just CGI'd him into the movie.
Isn't that the case?
No, he's not dead.
No, I know.
But fucking with us. Yeah, well, yeah. I'm sure they did some de-aging crap on him though.
I know that movie. The only thing that I ever heard about that movie was criticism, and then that it like performed poorly in the box office.
Yeah. With Hollywood now,
I watched the what's his name?
Critical Drinker.
The Critical Drinker. I watched his review of it too.
I love Critical Drinker, man. Hollywood seems determined to just shove as much shit down our throats lately as possible.
Yeah. But I watched this video, and it was like some kind of behind the scenes of that movie. And I say this just because I don't have a grasp on George Lucas and who he is as a person. And what he represents. I don't. all that I like. I'm not that big of a fan of the Star Wars movies. I like the first one. I like the second one. The third one's alright. And then from my perspective, everything after that sucks. So I'm not like the biggest George Lucas fan or anything like that.
Not me neither.
And a lot of my knowledge of him is just from him popping up in like random videos in the background, which from my perspective might be his best contribution to society. randomly appearing places.
Just appearing in the back. Didn't you say that happened? That's happened on more than one occasion?
That has happened on more than one occasion. I believe there's like a couple of videos of just like him being places. But this specific video that I'm talking about, it's like some like behind the scenes, probably like something that's like attached to the DVD of that Indiana Jones movie. The Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Yeah.
And in that, because the one thing that I've always heard about that movie, and you've seen that movie, right?
Yeah, the fridge shit. Is that what you're gonna say?
No, I've not seen that movie. Spoilers for that movie if you haven't seen it. Who cares? There's aliens at the end. Spoilers.
Yeah.
But I heard that. I was like, okay, and I've seen it. I've seen like the aliens at the end, and I know that that movie is. I know that for a lot of people, that's kind of like. I mean, that's what inspired those like South Park episodes where they were going to the movie theater and they were just watching,
Oh my
you know,
god, yeah.
Spielberg and Lucas have their way with
Oh
indie.
god, yeah. Dude, I watched that
Put
episode
it in a
like a
family
couple
friendly way.
yeah, I watched that episode a couple months ago and I was like my like entire respiratory system was seizing at how hard I was laughing at that part. It
Yeah,
was just so graphic to the point that it was like hilarious. I mean, that the
yeah.
subject is not funny, zero funny, but the
No.
way they did it in South Park was unbelievably funny to me.
Yeah. And you know what's funny though? Like, I remember when I watched that episode, I had never seen a Star Wars film. I had never seen any of the Indiana Jones movies, and I didn't even know who George Lucas was. I was just like, what is this? And now, now, many years later, I have the context.
Yeah, yeah.
But my point, I was watching this video. I was watching this video, and in the video, Spielberg is talking about how he did not want aliens. He's like, I did not want the whole aliens thing to be part of the movie.
It's
And I'm
always
like, oh, it seems
George's fault, dude.
yeah. So I was like, oh, it seems like Spielberg had a good head on his shoulders, and he said that he did his best to talk George Lucas out of it.
That's so weird too,
No,
because Spielberg's the head general on those movies on Indiana Jones.
but I think it was weird because it's like, again, this is like a featurette. Like, this is part of the movie, so they're talking about all of this in a really positive way, And in the background, there's like silly little music, like boop beep boo dee, boo, It's like
Yeah, yeah.
they're like presenting this as like a really like fun like little tidbit, and he talks about how hard he tried to get George Lucas to get rid of the whole aliens thing, and then they cut to George Lucas, and George Lucas is like, it was really important for me. I don't have a good I don't have a good George Lucas
This is
voice.
really important for me.
Yeah, exactly. And they cut to like a picture of like him hugging. It's weird, man, because it's like it's weird. And keep the South Park episode in the back of your mind as I say these things. But as he's saying this, and I'm going to tell you exactly what he says. He says, it was really important to me that me and what's his name? Spielberg. What's his first name?
Steven.
Steven. It was really important to me that me and Steven and Harrison, that we all were in the same page. So he said this in his George Lucas voice. And meanwhile, they're showing a picture of Harrison Ford in the middle, dressed as Indiana Jones,
Oh no.
being embraced on one side by George Lucas and on the other side by Steven Spielberg.
Oh no.
And he's like, it's really important that we're all on the same page. And then,
You gotta wonder how. I bet all three of them have seen that episode too.
but then they cut to Spielberg, and he keeps talking about how he was like, I hated the aliens thing, and he goes like, and Roland Emmerich, he had made his alien picture, and I didn't want us to make an alien picture,
Yeah,
and I'm like, okay, go on, and
that
he
was
was
like
like, and I
15
insist,
years earlier too.
yeah, he goes like, and I insisted that we don't do it, and then I go like, okay, what's going on, because on one end, Spielberg's talking about how he insisted he did not want to do aliens. And on the other side, you have George Lucas being like, ah, it's really important to me that we're all on the same page. And then you have that picture of the three of them embracing Indiana Jones.
Oh my god.
And so then Spielberg goes like, and then one day George comes to me and he says, you know what, Steven, we're not doing the aliens. And Steven Spielberg goes like, oh, and when he said that to me, he was like, I was so overjoyed, happy, I was like, oh, great, thank you. And again, here I am sitting watching this, being like, but there's aliens in the movie,
Right. Yeah.
And then he says, but Spielberg says, but then George told me, he was like, we're not gonna have aliens. He goes, we're gonna have and he says we're gonna have intra-dimensional beings.
Oh my God! For God's sake!
And then Spielberg was like, "What do you mean?" And he was like, "Well, you know string theory about how there's multiple dimensions."
Oh my God! What a
Like,
pretentious asshole!
he said to Spielberg, "They are not aliens; they are just beings from another dimension."
Ugh.
Then Spielberg said, and I asked him, "What do they look like?" And George Lucas said, "They look like aliens."
Yeah, they just look like the gray aliens from like.
But they're not aliens. And then
They
again, dude,
look just like the aliens from Fire in the Sky or whatever.
yeah. And dude, again, this is a featurette for this movie, so they're spinning this to be a positive, you know. And so then Spielberg goes, but that made it so much better. That made it so much richer. He said that it made it richer, that we're not aliens and that they could play with this old extra dimensional thing. And he was like,
They
"Oh,
didn't though."
And I was like, "Dude, you know that you hated that idea." And then they cut to George Lucas just smug being like, "Yeah, I know that the extra dimensionals were gonna really work for everybody."
Oh my God!
You ruined this. You're an idiot. You changed aliens for fancy aliens. They're like French aliens.
Yeah, dude, George. So, a couple things. I guess while we're shitting on George Lucas is like as a writer, he's like the king. I've noticed this in his featurettes and everything because I've watched like featurette clips from like Revenge of the Sith and the prequels and stuff, Star Wars prequels, and he's very much a writer who majors in minors, where it's like he is like gets really hung up on like cool shit the way like an 8-year-old would get hung up on like there was a spaceship and it's in the shape of an egg because it and it's he gets hung up on like that kind of stuff where it's like, dude, that's the icing. That's the icing. Like, that's the icing on the cake. That's not even the frosting. That's like the little icing on the sides, It's like those are like the details that you throw in after you have nailed down theme, character, plot.
Right.
Genre,
But those are
like
the things that he's like obsessed with.
Exactly. Like when you watch these featurettes, he's like, "Well, I came up with this idea for General Grievous, the the leader of the droid armies, and he's sort of an droid." He said he's an alien in a droid shell, which is what Anakin is going to become. And it's like, well, yeah, but that's cool and all, but it's like, yeah, exactly. It's like, well, that's cool and all, but it's like that's just it's like a little detail. It's like, where's the what who is General Grievous? What's his like backstory and everything.
Exactly.
And that's the thing. That's the tragedy of Star Wars is like there's so much like cool shit that they've expanded on in like the comics and the novels and novelizations and the animated shows and stuff where it's like General Grievous has like a really solid backstory, but it's not in the movie. It's not in the main thing. It's like part of the expanded universe shit, but it's like it's nowhere to be found in the actual movie, and that's like where it counts. It doesn't matter that it's in like some novelization or some comic book or whatever. That's my first thing. The second thing too, I honestly, because what they did with Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, it's like they didn't, I kind of, the way they did the aliens is like they didn't just try to do like, Independence Day or Close Encounters or something. They actually had like the whole idea of aliens and the Mayans, that whole like ancient astronauts thing, and they wove that in, which that I actually think like when you just look at that at face value, that actually it's not a bad idea. Like the idea wasn't bad at all. I mean that's actually a decent idea. That's the thing. It's like when you have a shitty movie, and I saw it when I was like 10 years old when it first came out. I haven't seen it since, but I'm just kind of going off of assumptions here and minor recollections, but it's like, people pick on that kind of nitpick at that stuff only because they hated the movie overall. If the movie was great, they would have loved that there were aliens in it. They would have been like, oh, if the movie was good and the characters were all solid and the plot was great and the action was exciting, they would have been like, well, that was really cool. Like, it would be like a visionary thing. Like, they really changed things up, but stayed true to the heart of what Indiana Jones is. You know, it's like they kept the archaeology stuff with the Mayans, but they interwove some ancient astronaut stuff to boot.
Right. Well, the issue is that it sucked ass.
Exactly. So then people will retroactively tear that aspect of it apart as well. But so that's a thing. It's like, that's not what ruined the movie. The fucking fridge scene ruined the movie. The fucking, all of the ridiculousness ruined the movie. The terrible sequence of Indiana Jones jumping back and forth in front of a green screen between cars, that ruined the movie. Fuck all those movies, man. Fuck Indiana Jones, fuck Star Wars, all that. It's like, fucking just stop making them. Well, honestly, I mean, it's just that like Hollywood bullshit. It's like, stop making them, dude. These were like good, solid movies back in the day. Like, come up with something new. Like, it's time. These actors are getting old. Stop making them.
Yeah, they're way too old, man.
I know.
They were too old. It's like, it's funny with Indiana Jones, because it's like, what were you guys trying to get out of that? It's like the guy's like, the guy is like beyond doing like acrobatics and like action flicks. Like, what were you guys trying to do with that movie?
Yeah.
It's so misguided. It obviously made no money in it. Was like hated critically, but it's like, of course.
Yeah.
The sad thing about it was like that James Mangold was involved. And he obviously mangled.
Yeah. He would have had a great Boba Fett movie, but instead we got that shit Disney Plus show.
That show, I thought you liked that show.
Boba Fett?
No.
Oh my god.
What show is that you like? I thought you liked it, like whatever show it is that they had.
No. Oh my god, no.
With
Boba Fett?
Baby Yoda? Didn't you like that show?
Oh, Mandalorian? Not really. It was okay. I like the first season was all right, and then the problem with Mandalorian is like the whole idea.
Isn't that Boba Fett? Isn't that the show?
No, he's a Mandalorian, like, which is Boba Fett's. He has Boba Fett's armor, but
dude, fuck if I know, man.
Yeah.
I don't know any of
Well, so like,
what's a Mandalorian? What's a Mandalorian?
What's a Nickelodeon? Fucking. Well, so it's like basically Jango Fett, who's Boba Fett's dad, was like a Mandalorian, which was a planet. And they all wore that.
You're speaking all these made up words.
Well, I'm explaining it to you. He wore that armor, and then he passed that armor onto his son.
When you say stuff like this, it sounds like going like spoopy, son of schmoopy. We're from the planet Poopy.
Gazorpazorp.
Yeah, Gazorpazorp, like Jango Fett, the father of Boba Fett.
Yeah,
like what a silly ass thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's just like, it's the lore or whatever. But the problem with Mandalorian is like what they were trying to do with Mandalorian was they were trying to do like a Western / samurai thing where it's like the character goes from A to B to C on different adventures, and it's ultimately kind of like no overarching plot. Well, that works fine for a 2-hour movie, but when you have 30 hours of television, it becomes kind of a problem because it's like,
it's meandering.
Yeah, it's just fucking meandering, and I couldn't even get through. Like, I tried to watch this the third season, and I was just like, I can't do this anymore with this shit because every episode's just a side quest, and the stakes are just so low. It's like, what the fuck are we even doing? The first season was decent because the stakes were kind of high, where it was like, Baby Yoda, the whole goal was to like protect Baby Yoda and get him away from Gus Fring.
Right.
But yeah, it just falls apart for me after that. I can't force myself to give a shit about that. And who knows when I'll even get around to this, but I know that Andor show was great. That Star Wars show.
Yeah, I heard the show was a standout. I
But
heard about that.
yeah, the problem is, and I think Critical Drinker touched on this, was it's just too little too late, where it's like it just can't, the timing was terrible. People were already like Star Wars'd out, so it kind of flew under the radar. And I'm Star Wars out. I mean, I'm beyond Star Wars out. I mean, I can't believe that 8 years ago, end of 2015, it was like
The Force Awakens.
Yeah, The Force Awakens, and sitting in a theater being like, holy shit, I cannot believe a new Star Wars is coming out. And fast forward a few years and it's like, oh my God, I can't believe they're still making Star Wars. It's so much Star Wars. Stop with Star Wars. It's a total 180 where it was like, I can't even believe that there was a time in my lifetime where Star Wars was like a far away thing. It was like they haven't made Star Wars in so long. And now it's just like Star Wars is fucking everywhere.
It's everywhere.
And it's like, holy shit.
Because they
like
also
Marvel.
had a show like about a character from one of the animated shows, right?
Oh yeah, Ahsoka. I couldn't give a shit about that. Yeah. I mean, and she was a great character in the animated show. I just can't, man. Because I know it's not going to be.
For which? Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I know it's going to be shit. I mean, if they can fuck up Boba Fett as bad as they did, then, I mean, people were waiting for Boba Fett for like 40 years since Empire. People love that character.
Man. But it's funny with Boba Fett, man, because it's like, what about him? Like, he just looked cool.
Yeah, he's just a cool looking design. Exactly.
Exactly. Like that character was completely just like living off of the design.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And then ultimately people got the show and just were disappointed, I guess.
Yeah. Well, people gravitate toward designs, man. I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
I'm a huge fan of the Hellraiser franchise, and a little known fact about Hellraiser is like the Pinhead was not supposed to be the Freddy of that franchise. Like he was not supposed to be the main antagonist because he, spoilers, at the end of the second movie he dies, and it was supposed to be Julia, that woman. She was supposed to be like the main villain for the rest of the series.
How bad would that have been?
Yeah. Well, it would have been weird. Like,
what a horrible idea.
But yeah,
horrible idea.
But of course, people clung harder to Pinhead than just some woman. I mean, she was amazing in those movies, but beautiful actress, but like
you said, the design is iconic.
Exactly, Pinhead's so iconic that people just hung on to it. But yeah, it was the same with Boba Fett. I mean, people just globbed onto that character, and
the character had a incredible design, that's for sure.
Yeah, it was good. But yeah, he says like a couple lines in the original movie.
Exactly.
Like, what if he doesn't survive? He's worth a lot to me. Doesn't
he just get eaten by that thing and that's
Return of the Jedi? Yeah, he dies so unceremoniously.
And then they what did they do? Then did they like retcon it and be like, oh, they actually didn't die? Is that what they did?
Well, yeah, he like flew out with his jetpack. They've done that a million. Well, they've done it a million times. They did it in like comic books and stuff, and of course, it was like the character was never going to go away.
Exactly, because that's the thing. Because it's like I guess George Lucas just didn't have the vision. He didn't have the dark vision to know like, oh, we're really gonna love this character.
Yeah.
And so he just had him going down like a dweeb, and then ultimately it's like, oh, actually, people love this guy, and they're gonna revive him.
Yeah, well, who's the best a character that I find way more interesting on not even a design level, sure, but also on a character level is Cad Bane, the other big bounty hunter, the blue guy with the hat.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
I mean, dude, I loved that character when I was a kid. Clone Wars was on when we were kids. I mean, whenever an episode with that character was coming up, like was being advertised, I was like, fuck, I'm like, my ass is in the seat. He was so cool. And but his character was interesting. Like he was he was a lot more, his character was far more interesting than Boba Fett. If you just look at like the live action or animated media and not counting like novelizations and comics and all that shit. But if you just look at like the big screen and small screen media that we got, of both of these characters, Cad Bane was like far more interesting and more fleshed out.
Yeah.
He was a bastard, but he was also like nuanced. They
Has
gave
he appeared
him.
in any live action stuff since then?
He was in the Boba Fett show,
Okay.
and
Okay.
and it looked like shit.
What show was it that they brought back Hayden Christensen? Was it like
Kenobi.
Okay. What did that amount to?
It was okay. I mean,
cannoli.
They tried to do like a Better Call Saul thing with that show where it was like, oh, we're gonna, introduce a couple of new characters that you don't know what happens to, but
okay.
Which was commendable, but it just, I don't know, it was okay. It was all right. Nothing to write home about.
Talk about Better Call Saul though.
I know.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm not gonna touch on this. I'm not gonna bring up like the sore.
The Emmys. Is that where you're going to?
No, that's not where I was going.
Oh.
But that did happen. To everybody listening, I mean, people who are listening to this show and that have been with us for a while, they know, that obviously we're huge fans of Better Call Saul. Award shows are weird.
Yeah.
In that, and I figure this might be a good segue to touch on the Oscars. But award shows are weird, man, because, as part of the general public, we, at least for me, at least I can say this for myself, I don't really care too much,
I don't either.
And I think the general public has over time gotten to the point where they don't really care too much. It's like, I think we've all kind of recognized it for what it is. It's kind of, in a lot of ways, it's rigged. In a lot of other ways, it's just rich people, patting themselves in the back and being like, "Oh, you're such a nice actor. Here's an award." It's like some industry BS.
Yeah. And let me do a political speech and.
Exactly. Whereas like before, if you watch just award shows like in the 80s, 90s, I know that there's always been kind of like activism involved, but a lot of it used to be just kind of people saying thank you and being like, hey, thanks everybody,
Yeah.
But now it's become more activism than it ever was. But obviously we're in a very, I guess, we're in a very divisive political climate. We're not going to get into that regardless.
Yeah.
But the point that I'm trying to get at with this is Bob Odenkirk, man. It really seemed like it would have meant a lot to that guy.
Yeah.
Like, and that's the only reason why I feel bad for the show. Apparently it's like also the most nominated show ever to not have won even one thing.
Right.
It didn't win even one thing. Not one thing. Nobody won anything.
It's
not
insane.
Anybody who wrote any of the episodes. Not anybody who directed any of the episodes. Nobody got anything. It's the most nominated show ever to not get an award.
It's unreal.
It was just watching, those reactions from that guy, and then watching that interview with Bob Odenkirk where he's just defeated.
Oh yeah.
Like even before the award is given out, he knows, and he's like, no, it's nice to be here, and I was like, oh.
He looked like he was seething. Like he really seemed like angry, actually, a little bit.
But
like he kind of knew it was bullshit.
Man. Yeah, that hurt me because the poor guy. It's like, oh, because when you feel like that, when you feel the way that he was clearly feeling, that it meant something to him at least once.
Yeah.
And it was just the heartbreak of year after year after year after year, ending this year, of just being like, nope, not you,
Yeah.
It's rough. For what's arguably, top 10 greatest shows of all time,
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's like, besides Breaking Bad, I mean, it's the greatest. I think it's the greatest show ever made. And it's like you can snub a lot of things, but you don't snub the greatest. You don't snub the best. And that many times you had that many chances.
That many times.
It's like, look, fucking Ozark can get snubbed.
Exactly, bro. Exactly. And I remember with Ozark.
Unreal.
You remember this?
Unreal.
You remember this with Ozark, where I think I watched 2 episodes of that with you, and I was like, this is bad.
It's terrible.
And and that show has like 100% more awards than Better Call Saul.
I don't understand it too. Like I found Ozark just to be the most like, especially season 2, like the most boring show ever. I'm like, how did people stick with this? How did like
Yeah.
mainstream audiences stick with this show? I don't understand it, dude. Like season 2 was some of the worst television I've ever seen. The most dull, boring, stupid, uninspired television ever. And
dude, while we were on air, I have to look up the show and see how many awards it got.
I mean, dude, and it's like, how did mainstream audiences stick with this? Like, what is it about this show? You know? Anyway,
this is where
this is all the bitterness coming out of me.
No, I know, dude. It's good. This is therapeutic. I was gonna say like this is where the real intellectuals hang.
yeah.
And the Film Tangents subscriber account.
Exactly. Yeah, our small but growing community of smart film buffs.
Hey, folks listening, don't forget to like and subscribe.
Yeah, that's right.
Leave a comment. Turn on those notifications. Follow the podcast on Apple Podcasts or on there. Leave us a review.
Yeah.
Help us out. Help us out as the new season of the show begins.
Yep. Help out the show, folks. I don't know. Yeah, we're already we started late today, everybody.
It'll be a short one today.
Yeah, we started late tonight. We had some catching up to do. But welcome to season 2 of Film Tangents. Do you want to do like a quick recap of like, just a few things you've been watching or reading lately? And
for me it's always the listening.
Listening.
I'll share my listenings with everybody. I think since we last spoke, I've been on the J's. I don't know how far. I think we went through James Blake and went through Jay-Z.
Yeah, we did go through Jay-Z.
I'm pretty sure that we. Yeah, no, I know, right? I'm pretty sure that we also went through Jid. So I'm not even going to talk about him. But Jid's okay. The Forever Story is all right. People overhype the Forever Story. It's not that great. I listened to the Jimi Hendrix Experience.
Oh,
I listened to Are You Experienced and to Electric Ladyland. I mean, both classic albums. Not much has to be said. Everything has been said about these albums. Favorites out of Are You Experienced? Purple Haze. Obviously, Hey Joe.
Yeah.
Love or Confusion. Made This Be Love. Fire. Foxy Lady. Are You Experienced? I mean, the whole album. I mean, geez. I mean, it's a classic.
Every song is just a fucking grand slam.
Yes, and Electric Ladyland, which, in my opinion, I think it might be a little bit more, like a little bit better than Are You Experienced, but they're both classic albums. I mean, what can you really say? Voodoo Child, Long Hat Summer Night, Gypsy Eyes, All Along the Watchtower, classics. Can't really say too much about them. Listened to Jonna Newsom, who I really like. Jonna Newsom. I've been aware of her music for a long while. It's just kind of like, it's not for everybody, but it's ultimately just kind of like this pseudo classical, very instrumental, like harp focused, like almost like folklore songs. Divers is an incredible album, 2015, the last one that she released. And then tracks 1 and 2, Anecdotes and Sapokanikan are highlights in that album. Great albums. All her work is really great. I've listened to a handful of John Coltrane albums. Mode for Joe.
Yep.
Giant Steps. Yep. Blue Train. Classic. Jazz. I'm not gonna elaborate much on that either. Just if you love jazz and you haven't listened to Mr. John Coltrane, then you're doing yourself a disservice. I mean, also Joe Henderson. He's the one who did Mode for Joe, and Joe Henderson's really great also. And then I've listened to Mr. John Lennon, best Beatle, favorite Beatle, John Lennon. I listened to his John Lennon / Plastic Ono Band album, his first solo album post Beatles. Incredible, near perfection. I only don't like song number 8, Well. That's the only song I don't like. Everything else in this album is literally perfect. and this ending song God that then transitions into My Mom Is Dead, which is a 20-second, 30-second outro. Incredible. I mean, dude, incredible.
Which one was
You
it?
can't
Which one are you talking about right now?
the John Lennon / Plastic Ono Band album, like
Okay.
the very first post Beatles album from 1970. It's just
I'll probably
11.
listen to that while I'm working tomorrow.
Yeah, dude, it's just 11 songs, and again, near perfection, like near perfection. Incredible album, and I can't say it enough. You know, incredibly gifted artist. To me, top one Beatle, and then behind him George Harrison, and then behind George Harrison, Paul McCartney.
Oh, you did my boy Paul McCartney dirty, man.
And then Ringo. Yeah, that's where Paul McCartney deserves to be, honestly.
Nah, man. I don't know. I gotta get a little more data, I guess. I think I'm being a little biased toward Paul McCartney.
You're being biased, dude. You have to listen to John Lennon, man. You have to listen to like his solo work. It's impeccable.
Well, yeah. I mean, I've heard like obviously solo work from all three of them. I don't know if I like Ringo Starr. It doesn't even matter. But like all three of them. But it's like, I mean, come on, let's be real here. But I mean, I don't think so unless someone can tell me otherwise. That again, that's like a sort of almost layman thing to say, maybe, but because I don't know, I haven't looked into his solo work. I just, I know that everybody else has kind of like dismissed him. But yeah, like I need to go. I've listened to all of those guys' solo work, but I need to do more of a deep listen, I guess, before I make a decision. Yeah. I've always said that like Paul McCartney is my favorite, but I think I do need more data, as they say.
No, and I'll be fair to Paul, and I'll listen to his. I won't listen to all his shit, but I'll listen to his known like great solo records.
Yeah.
Just to give him his fair shot. But John's incredible, and I also listened to Imagine, which Imagine might be just a perfect album. Like for Plastic Ono Band, it's like the one song that I'm like, I always skip that fucking song. It's I can't really hang with that song too much. But with Imagine, I think Imagine might actually just be a perfect album. I mean, starts with Imagine, Crippled Inside, Jealous Guy. It ends with Oh Yoko. How is great. How Do You Sleep? I mean, how do you sleep? It's like such a gut punch because it's obviously him kind of dishing and kind of having beef with Paul. I don't know what the hell was going on with those two guys. All My Love's in Here. Give Me Some Truth is great. I think Imagine is a perfect album, and the Plastic Ono Band is like just one step below it. Incredible work. And then today, I listened to Johnny Cash at Folsom Prison.
Yeah. That's a great one, man.
Which is so great,
so good,
so full of character.
My dad introduced me to that album.
Everything about this album, so full of character. Johnny Cash is just, it's mind blowing that it's like, oh, he's doing this live in this prison, and he sounds pitch perfect.
Yeah,
and his execution of every one of these songs is just impeccable, and you're like, oh man, this is the best perfect version of this song. Cocaine Blues, 25 Minutes to Go, Folsom Prison, I mean, yeah, it's Johnny Cash.
So good.
But that's where I've been, and I will continue my Jay's journey. I've kind of taken detours re-listening to stuff. You and I talked about Black Midi, obviously Death Grips, Car Seat Headrest, stuff that I always love. We're listening to Black Country New Road. Just taking time to listen to just great stuff on the side. But for the most part, that's it. What do you have?
There was an artist that I was I can't remember who it was though, but I knew was like further down the alphabet than where you're at now, that I was gonna like say, dude, like add them as a stop on your road here. I cannot remember who it was though right now.
Oh man.
I have to figure out who I was thinking of. I'll get back to you on that. But yeah, I mean, I'll keep it brief. Like, yeah, I mean, I've been keeping up. I mean, since since we had our Christmas special, I've been keeping up on my movies, steadily watching a solid number of movies each week, at least like a couple a week. But yeah, I mean, some notables, I guess. Like I watched The Equalizer the other day for the first time. My buddy and
what
I.
do you think?
I thought it was okay. I think the
Yeah,
problem
it's
with
not too bad.
it's interesting because it came out the same year as John Wick, and I think what made John Wick so much better is that John Wick is vulnerable in that movie.
Yeah,
Denzel is just totally on top of everything that entire movie. He barely takes a punch, to where it's like this. There's no tension.
It was in his contract.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's like this guy. He's just on top of things at all times. It's like, what the fuck? And then Dan Bilzerian is in that movie, which is weird.
Yeah,
he
that's
gets
right.
killed,
That's right.
and his
That's
death
right.
scene is like terrible. It's like, dude, you suck. You can't even like act out dying. Oh my god. But yeah, I mean, fuck. I watched a lot of shit. I mean, I'll rattle off a few things. When Evil Lurks, that was back in December. That movie sucks. That's from the same director that did Terrified. That guy sucks. I mean, that movie sucked ass. I don't. When Evil Lurks. I mean, horror movie. It's the same director as that Terrified movie. And I didn't even realize it until halfway through the movie. I'm like, this is that same fucking director. And I looked it up and it was. I could tell. So bad, dude.
You could tell.
My boys from Cumtown, Nick Mullen and Stavros, had two comedies. Each came out with a comedy special back in December. Those were great. Yeah, I watched Dead Man's Shoes for the first time. That was solid. What else did I watch? The Proposition. That was all right.
Is that the one? Is that the one with Ryan Reynolds and?
No,
something else?
That is with Guy Pearce and Danny Houston is in that. It's like a Australian Western. It was okay. I saw my first Gamera film back in December. That was all right.
Your first what?
Gamera, that giant turtle Godzilla knockoff.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was okay. Let's see. I watched A Rainy Day in New York. That was
the
good.
Woody Allen movie.
Yeah, I thought that was all right.
Okay.
El Topo I watched for the first time. I thought that
Hodorowski?
was yeah. I thought that was
How was that?
It was okay. I thought it was a little like convoluted, but not convoluted, just weird, boring.
I have to check that out.
It's got some cool stuff in it for sure. My favorite movie of the holiday season that I watched was The Apartment. That's like an old Christmas comedy.
Yeah.
That's a great movie. I watched that I was at my grandparents' house around the holidays.
Oh, nice.
And I threw that movie on for us all, and we all enjoyed that. That was nice.
Okay.
Yeah, I rewatched I watched Who Framed Roger Rabbit for the first time.
Oh, really? Oh, that's a nice movie.
Yeah, that was fun. I watched Hot Tub Time Machine for the first time a few weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
I watched
I never liked that movie.
It was all right. I thought it was enjoyable. I like John Cusack in it.
Yeah.
I watched Piranha for the first time. That's shit.
Piranha 3D?
Yeah. I watched Sound of Freedom. I have more to say about this movie, but we'll just leave it where it is right now. I thought I thought that was good.
We'll have some cliffhangers. We'll talk about that, I think, next time, and we'll talk about Cuddy's album.
Yes, sure. We got to talk about Cuddy's album. I watched a movie called Witchfinder General a few weeks ago with Vincent Price. This is an underrated film. This is an old kind of historical horror film. The horror, though, kind of takes a back seat. It's more of a drama, but there's horror elements in it. But it's basically about who I understand is a real historical figure, sort of like a witch hunter who used to go around accusing witches. But it was really just an excuse to carry out his sadistic desires.
I see.
So it's very infuriating because you're watching it and it's like this guy who claims to be a holy man and who's like, I'm the law. Yeah, and just taking advantage of people and women and in a lot of cases, abusing them physically, psychologically, sexually. Like it's a disturbing ass movie. But I gave that an 8 out of 10. Like it's actually great. I mean,
I'll check it out.
It's very philosophically like, it's just to me it's like the horrors of religious fundamentalism. It is like the horrors of evil masking itself as good. That is the most like infuriating thing to me, and that movie is infuriating, but it's great. I watched a horror film called Triangle a few weeks ago. I thought that was pretty good. I watched a comedy called Role Models. That was really good. That made me laugh quite a bit.
I think I've seen that. It might not be like logged in my letterbox, but I'm pretty sure I've seen that movie.
Yeah.
With
Paul
that one
Rudd.
guy and Paul Rudd and the other guy, the blonde guy.
Yeah, I don't know his name, but then Christopher Mintz-Plasse.
Yeah, Christopher Mintz-Plasse. That's right. There's a scene in that movie where they go to some kind of like they're like fighting with swords. Like
yeah.
Yeah, I've seen that movie. Yeah.
I love that movie's fun. That movie made me laugh out loud like quite a few times. I thought that was like funnier than your average comedy, dude.
Yeah.
By contrast, I watched The Change Up with Ryan Reynolds. That was pretty dumb. And then the last movie I watched was the other day called The Innocents. Have you heard of this movie? It's a Norwegian movie, I want to say, but it's about kids who discover they have telekinesis. But one of them is like a little sociopath that likes to kill cats. And it kind of goes from there. Pretty interesting, a little boring, but it was very well acted, very well made. But yeah, that was like my rattling off of all the movies I watched for the past 2 months. So there you go. That and that wasn't that was like, that was me doing my best to sort of rattle them all off. But I was like, fuck it. I want to kind of get into this. But yeah, like
some rapid fire reviews.
Yeah, rapid firing on TV shows. My roommate and I right now are watching or my housemate, I should say, are watching Reacher, which I think is really overrated. Like it's pretty good, but it's incredibly overrated. Like it's not that good. And then the show Invincible came back, the animated superhero show.
I gotta get on that, dude.
Dude, it's so fucking good. It's great.
I gotta get on that. That.
It's not as good as The Boys, but it's really good.
I've been meaning to get on that show.
Yeah. And then let me see. And then I just finished The Dark Tower book 2 by Stephen King, and that was pretty good. And I'm kind of trying to figure out which novel I want to read next. I'm like between a few. I'm being a little stingy. I'm being a little picky. Like I'm trying to, because novels are fucking commitment. So
yeah.
But yeah. Oh, and I've been watching at bedtime because I like to watch a little comedy show at bedtime. I've been watching Dr. Katz, Professional Therapist.
You talked to me about that. That's right.
That show's funny, man. That's a good show. Funny enough, I discovered that show through a Family Guy cutaway, and I was like, "What is this?" And which
be honest,
shout out to Family Guy.
I think that's where I had seen that before.
Yeah. Which shout out to Family Guy. That's what I love about Family Guy is like, say what you want about Family Guy, but it really is like a great sort of melting pot of just pop culture, similar to South Park. But like Family Guy really is like, I think what's great about Family Guy, just to finish this point really quick, is like, it's a great deconstruction of art and pop culture in general. I think that's like the highest compliment I could give Family Guy as a TV show. And like you can actually, it's so funny, you can discover a lot just through their fucking cutaways and pop culture references and stuff. Like they'll say something and I'm like, what?
No, dude, absolutely
yeah. Like, right. I mean, for instance, there's like a scene where they're like, Laura Bush killed a guy. And I was like, what?
What?
And you look it up. She hit a guy with her car or something like that, like it was an accident, but just shit like that, where it's like, oh, it's like, wow, let me look this up, and you might discover something. So, hey, shout out Seth MacFarlane.
Shouts out, man.
Yeah. But, yeah, we're running close to crunch time. So let's get into our show, man.
Let's hit it, everybody.
Or our movie, rather.
Our movie, yeah. I'm sure you guys guessed it by the title.
And the this big, week, fat image that's on the thumbnail.
Yeah, right. This week, we're talking about Paddington 2. I know that this has been a highly anticipated one getting text messages asking me when are the guys going to do Paddington 2.
Oh yeah,
so, might as well do it now.
Oh, have you gotten recommendations for Paddington 2?
Shouts out to my man Langston. This one's for you, brother.
Okay, all right.
This is directed by Paul King.
Langston.
Shout out Langston, dude.
Let's go.
Friend of the show.
Friend of the show.
Directed by Paul King. For a long time, and I don't know if it still is, this was the highest ever rated film on Letterboxd. Came out in 2017. Crazy. Comedy adventure movie about a nice bear. What do you got about Paddington, Brandon?
Yeah, man. Listen, like I really liked it. It was really, it's just a heartwarming film. Yeah. I think the first one was just a very heartwarming film that brings a smile to your face, and this movie was it was very sweet, and you need some of that sometimes, man, especially like in your 20s, you're not a kid anymore, and especially somebody like me, and I think I said this when we watched the first one, it's like, listen, like I'm a huge fan of genre films. Like I love I write horror, so I'm always thinking about like horror ideas. I love watching horror films. I love watching action films. I like watching dark, violent films about serious, dark subjects. My favorite shows of all time, Better Call Saul, Breaking Bad, Hannibal, incredibly dark shows. Novels. I'm always reading horror novels, dark fantasy novels. And it's like, fuck. When I watch something like Paddington, it's like I forget that there's actually like art that is optimistic.
It's happy, dude.
It's
happy.
And I know I just rattled off a lot of comedy films and stuff, but like, let's be honest, a lot of like R-rated comedies can be aren't so optimistic sometimes either. They're funny, but there always is sort of like a shitty lining, in them where it's like, that's reality, man.
Yeah.
And yeah, man, I think like sometimes the greatest favor you can do yourself is just to watch a movie like this.
Yeah.
Where a movie where, some little bear goes to prison and some prisoners help him out. Yeah. And it's like, oh shit. Some prisoners, do the right thing, help him out. And and it's funny because it's like, I've read and watched a lot of videos about prison, and it's like, one thing that happens in prison is like you go and you don't want to tell people your release date. Why is that?
Right.
Because if then they'll fuck with you when your release date's coming up because they're jealous. They don't want you to get out of prison,
Just try to keep you in there.
And I liked that in this movie that they still were realistic, because there was a point midway through this movie where I was like, I don't know about these prisoners helping out Paddington. And then boom, they were like, yeah, they kind of fucked him over a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. They were like, we lied to you because we knew that you wouldn't do it if we told you the truth.
Yeah, and that was a bit of a breath of fresh air for me because I was like, okay, good. This movie's being optimistic without being naive. And I think that's the masterpiece that's what makes this movie kind of a masterpiece in its genre, is because it's it's optimistic without being naive. Because that's the whole theme of the whole idea of Paddington's character. It's like he is a flat arc character in both movies. His whole arc is he changes people around him, right? He remains optimistic, and he gets tested. His optimism gets pushed on, but he never becomes cynical, right? He always stays positive. He gets beaten down. He has moments of of wanting to give up, but he stays optimistic. But it's good that they're teaching the right lessons in this movie, in these movies, where they're like, hey, be optimistic. Don't be naive though.
Right. Exactly.
But be optimistic. And that's good because I do think that there is a lot of media these days that teaches people to be a bit naive. That teaches people to have misplaced faith. Right. Like I think the whole, we just, Christmas time was only a month ago. I think the whole like Santa Claus movie craze of like the 2000s was very weird. Cause it's when I go back and watch those as an adult, I'm like, what are we saying here? It's like, what are we saying? We're telling kids to like, I don't know. It's just odd. It's like, what are we trying to say with this? It's like we're telling people to believe in Santa Claus, and we're making the people who don't believe in him look like idiots. And it's like,
Right.
what are we doing here? But I think Paddington really rides that line very well. So for me, like that's it on a thematic level. I don't know. What are your thoughts on a thematic level there, or just as a whole? I guess.
Just I guess as a whole, this movie just made me smile.
Exactly. I did too.
And like and that it like it made me laugh in some sections, but I remember the scene where everybody eats the marmalade sandwiches for the first time, and they're so happy.
Yeah.
And I was just like smiling all through that scene, and then
it reminded me of Shawshank. It's the Padshank redemption, dude. The Bearshank redemption.
It really was the Bearshank redemption. But it's also fascinating, man, how they play with emotion in a way that still feels in a way that doesn't feel like baloney, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't feel like it really, like, it feels genuine. It's fascinating with these movies, like I associate this kind of film in a way almost to like an adjacent to like a Wes Anderson movie,
Yeah.
And that's why my favorite Wes Anderson movie is The Grand Budapest Hotel. Have you seen that movie?
No, but I know it's like it takes place a lot of it in prison, right?
Yeah. Oh, dude, hold on to it. Don't watch it. Let's either do it together or let's make it like an episode.
Yeah. Okay.
But I associate this movie like adjacent to those Wes Anderson films, just in the sense that there is a flawless execution of just like human moments within this silliness, because you would think that like there wouldn't be any nuance, or there would not be any kind of like levity, or real connection to the human having a human like feeling or emotion in a movie like this.
Yeah.
Just because of it being like a family movie with a silly bear. But it's not the case at all, man. Like, when Knuckles was just kind of like really like, like I felt that with what's his name? It's not Domhnall Gleeson, that's his son. Brendan Gleeson, I think that's him, the actor that plays Knuckles. When he's like nervous because he doesn't know if the guys are gonna like it, and then he's like really happy that they really liked it, like stuff like that. I really like it. Really did like touch me, and I was like, oh man, this is great.
Yeah.
And then I genuinely felt like really positive when all of them are like, I like to cook. I like to design like tables. I like to make, cakes. And it's like, oh man, it just felt like so like positive, and it just kind of filled me with like so much like joy watching this, and then watching all of them sing and dance and the whole place just get revamped and all these flowers everywhere, and then they cut to like the prison guard reading them like a nighttime story.
Yeah.
It's and it works, and that's like the miracle of this movie. And it's fascinating, I know that Wonka movie's in theaters and it's by the same director. I don't know what the deal with Wonka is. I don't know if it's good or not, but it's Paul King. So they got this guy to do that. But this is a movie that honestly, man, to me, it just kind of felt like flawless execution. Even at the end with like the Deus Ex Machina of them arriving at exactly the lake.
I knew that was going to happen. I knew they were going to pull a Han Solo. It was like the same trick. Yeah, I knew that was coming.
Yeah, and it was telegraphed, and so it's going to happen. But even when it happened, and I was like, I know this was going to happen. I knew they were trying to pull and be like, ooh, what if Paddington dressed like Paddington's not fucking going to drown? Like even then, I was still with it. I was like, all right, I'm with it. I'm not gonna.
And you need to telegraph it so it's not an Deus Ex Machina.
An Ex Machina, really. Yeah. It is in a way just because it's like, how the fuck did they get here?
Oh, I thought that too. I was like, how the fuck did they land in the exact spot?
Spot.
And then they just happen to have a hydroplane too. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Or a water plane. Isn't hydroplane when your car spins out in the water?
That is when your car spins in the water.
Yeah, it is.
But it is. but you said it in a way that with such conviction that it was like, yeah, it is. But even then, I was like, I'm gonna let this slide.
Oh no, that is it's also
It's also that a hydroplane is also that.
A hydroplane is a fast motorboat where the hull shape is such that at speed the weight of the boat is supported by planing forces rather than simple buoyancy. Okay,
Wow.
so
But it's also when you hydroplane with your car.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
But this movie did things with such conviction, and in such a way that it was just like, yeah, we're doing this, because we think this is the best way to go about this. That I was just like, yeah, I'm all the way in with this.
yeah.
I had a bust, like I had like a laugh out loud moment when they visit Paddington and all the prisoners like come out and he introduces all of them and the guy turns off the lights and
Yeah.
he like goes like all these guys look horrible,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
he
that
goes
was
like, hey,
great.
he goes like, you just turned off the light. The thing to turn off the mic is on the other
Yeah,
side.
yeah, that was
And he
great.
goes like, oh fellas, I'm sorry if I offended any of you. It's like,
Yeah.
dude.
The family was all
Uh,
great too. They set all their character arcs up perfectly too, where it's like,
mhm.
in this movie, it is a very like, and that's just the nature of the territory, where it's like it's very formulaic. If
Mhm.
you're a writer, at least you know exactly where things are going.
Yeah.
They set everyone's character arcs up in the beginning, where they're like, this is what so and so's been up to, and it's like, okay, so
Right.
his character arc is going to be that
That
he
he,
admits that he's into steam trains. Like.
exactly. He's gonna embrace who he is.
Exactly, but that was a great moment. Like, I'm not
Yeah.
JD, I'm whatever, and I love steam
Right.
trains. It's like
Right. The dad is
nice.
gonna throw that one ball and hit the guy at one point because that's he's reminiscing of who he was.
Yeah,
She's gonna do the swim. Like all these things were like set up. But I think you're dead on when you were talking about the themes of the film because I think honestly that that's ultimately really what it came down to. And it's like, being optimistic, and being hopeful, and kind of remaining true to your convictions, and ultimately, just being, I guess ultimately it's just like just being your truest self and just being the person that you are, and not letting the world around you like change that. And then, I guess hoping that everything's gonna come, it's gonna be fine in the end, and that
yeah,
your friends are gonna rescue you, and that things are gonna be all right.
yeah,
I also liked Hugh Grant in this movie. He was great. Apparently,
yeah.
he said that this is like his favorite movie of himself,
Interesting.
and that's something that I like about these movies too. That it's like the villains in these movies are not like irredeemable. They're just like people who have motives that are like mischievous, and they cause bad things, but the movie doesn't punish them with like death or like some kind of like,
Yeah,
like the movie ends with him just having like this big performance in the prison and then being like, oh, I guess really the ultimate thing that I needed was a captive crowd, and it's like, oh, good for you.
yeah,
So yeah, I enjoy that too about these movies. That it's like it's just so positive, man. It's just like just trying to say to the viewer, just like have a positive outlook of life, and don't let the small things like defeat you. Just keep going forward.
yeah,
And I really loved that. I thought it was a great message, and that's also why I thought it was a great movie for us to kick off the year with.
yeah. Definitely. I mean, I will say, I think 10 years was a pretty stiff sentence. I mean, holy shit. I was like, Jesus Christ, really? 10 years? Oh my God.
10
I
years.
was like, damn, dude, that's pretty dark.
Yeah. They
But
dropped a book on him, dude. They made an example out of him because he's famous.
yeah, what is he? What is it? Because he's a bear? Yeah. But
Yeah.
anyway, oh yeah, I was gonna say too. What's interesting, because it's like you look at the concept of sequels is always an interesting one. Where it's like, how do we
Mhm.
make a sequel work? It's like,
Yeah.
is bigger always better? And it's like, well, it's like it's so sequels are so weird. It's like you don't want to. You look back at like the great sequels, and it's like they strike a balance between not retreading the first movie, but also not going too big either. What I find interesting about this movie is it doesn't retread the first movie really at all.
Mhm.
It's like the villain has a completely different motive, and it was almost more subtle than the first movie,
Yeah.
where it was almost like you could have switched them a little bit, where like the stakes in the first movie were a little higher. Like the first movie could be the second, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Where it's like, oh, in the first movie, Paddington was in prison. In this one, he's fighting for his life. This lady wants to,
right?
Put him on,
He's fighting for his life.
stuff him and put him in a glass case.
Little
it's like,
man's fighting for his life.
Yeah, it was almost like the opposite, where it's like the stakes are like a little lower in the second one, which was kind of interesting, but it worked. I mean, the stakes were still high, but they were, not life or death in this one.
No,
as
no,
much.
they were basically just 10 years in prison or no 10 years in prison.
Exactly, basically. Which is still pretty high stakes, but hey.
I have to say, man, I enjoyed this movie more than the first one.
I did too. Yeah. I think it was better.
Yeah, like I gave the first one a 7, and I think I would give this one like an 8. Like I thoroughly enjoyed this movie, and honestly, I would show this movie to anybody. I'll be like, if you want to just have a great time, watch that movie. And I feel like just because of that, for me, it deserves to be like on my 8 out of 10 like great movies list.
Same here. Yeah, definitely.
My Roger Ebert 4 out of 4 list.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I got a little emotional toward the end too. I mean, like when it looked like she wasn't going to be able to pull him out of there in time before, I was like, oh man, that's heavy. Yeah. And then I liked that ending too of them, of him just hugging his aunt. That was really wholesome.
Yeah. No, dude, like you, man, I got emotional with that somehow, even though I knew what was going to happen, especially not necessarily like just that interaction with her in Paddington, but when they took him out and the concern that Knuckles was expressing for him and being like, oh, breathe, little guy, I was like, oh,
yeah.
I was moved, dude. I was like, oh my God, like somehow this is like really like affecting me.
Yeah.
Fascinating film, dude. This movie deserves like all the love, and it also, I mean, I need to watch this movie a few more times. It deserves to be studied, like how brilliantly they just executed on this film.
Yeah. Yeah, no, they put a lot of thought into, all aspects of the story, I think, in this one. It was nice. It was great. We both gave it an 8 out of 10, I guess. So there we go.
Yeah. Saying all of that, mister, do you have anything for us next week, or do you want to surprise us?
No, I have a pick for next week. So I put a lot of thought into this, and for a multitude of reasons, the film of next week is going to be my favorite movie of all time.
Oh,
Clerks.
I knew it, dude. You know what's funny, man? Like, literally, like 2 or 3 days ago, I was about to sit down and watch that movie.
Really? Oh shit!
I was, and I
that happens all the time, man.
But you know why?
Why?
It was because I don't know if it was like Rogan. I think Rogan might have talked about it. Like somebody talked about it, and I watched that person talk about it, and I was like, it's time to watch Clerks.
Yeah.
And then I thought to myself, I was like, I think Jake's gonna want to
like
do something with that movie.
Yeah, because for context, everybody, like I think Clerks is like for me the definitive New Year film. It's meant to be watched, I think, in like the best time of year to watch it is like January and February because, so it's kind of in the way that we took It's a Wonderful Life, and even though It's a Wonderful Life isn't explicitly a Christmas movie. Yeah. Meaning that the final like half hour takes place on Christmas, and it's like a 2.5 hour movie. We've made it a Christmas classic. I think Clerks, for me, I've done the same thing in my kind of like head pop culture in terms of Clerks, where I've made Clerks sort of my de facto New Year film because of the themes, which are themes of making your own decisions and the consequences of not taking charge of your life, the consequences of not making changes in your life. And also, on a more superficial level, when it's shot and everything, it's pretty like wintry outside. Mm-hmm. It's not snowing, but it's like, you could tell it's winter. The trees are barren and everything. It's a very like January, February feeling movie where it's just, it has that feeling of like you're in the winter of life kind of, and you need the main character needs to begin his spring, so to speak. But that's the headspace you want to go into this movie with. I
think the start of the year is a great time for it because I think you're just like almost just naturally in that headspace.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, everyone wants to make changes in the new year. And so many people, so many of us, I'm guilty of it in the past, like, you languish, and you're afraid to make those decisions.
Yeah.
In the words of the main character of Clerks, it's like I'm too comfortable to risk it all in the big wins in the fabulous prizes. It's like,
Yeah.
but anyway, that's the headspace to go into Clerks with. And I'm really excited to rewatch that movie. And yeah, for you to see it for the first time. So
let's do it, man.
Hell yeah. So
everybody,
next week on Film Tangents, we're back, everybody. We're
back.
Happy New Year and happy season 2, baby. Season 2.
Get hyped, everybody. We'll be back next week. Same channel, different time. Next week, my name will be Edward and Jake's name will be Jake's.
See ya.
Next time on Film Tangents. Bye.